It roared through city streets. It clawed up desert dunes. It outlasted rust, rain, and decades forgotten in sheds. Yet it still runs. It wasn't a Hemi. It wasn't a V8. But it crushed giants. It conquered Bathurst. And then GM tried to bury it. This is the explosive truth about the Holden 202 engine, the motor they tried to silence but could never kill, the world it was born into. Australia, late 1960s. The country was booming. Highways carved through the outback. Families were buying bigger, faster cars. Holden stood tall as Australia's car maker. The Red Motor 6, 138, 149, 161, 179, 186, had powered the EH, the HD, the HR. It was the engine of choice for tradies, mums, hoons, and Bathurst heroes. But rivals were circling. Ford's Falcon was muscling in. Chrysler was sharpening its knives, preparing to unleash the Hemi 6. Imports were trickling into showrooms, whispering promises of refinement and efficiency. The Red Motor family was strong, but aging. By 1969, the 186 cubic inch 6 was starting to look small. Australians wanted more cubes, more grunt, more muscle. Holden's engineers sat around the drawing board. They had one job: build a bigger 6. One that could haul caravans, towboats, and storm up Mount Panorama. It needed to be tougher. It needed to be stronger. And it needed to carry Holden through the horsepower wars. The answer was the 202. Stroked out from the 186, it displaced 202 cubic inches, the largest inline-6 Holden had ever built. When it debuted in 1971 in the brand new HQ Holden, it wasn't just another option on the spec sheet. It was Holden's declaration of war, what Holden was chasing. Holden wanted more than sales. They wanted supremacy. Australia's roads demanded torque. Farmers needed pulling power. Families wanted reliability. And racers wanted speed. The 202 promised all three. On paper, it was simple. More cubes meant more power. More stroke meant more torque. But for Holden, it was about more than numbers. It was about pride. Bathurst loomed in every boardroom meeting. The great race wasn't just a marketing tool, it was survival. Win at Mount Panorama and your cars sold in the thousands. Lose, and the headlines wrote themselves. Holden needed the 202 to be a weapon. They dreamed of a lightweight Torana armed with the new 6, humiliating Ford's massive Falcon V8s. The dream was simple, a David versus Goliath story. The 202 as the slingshot, the Torana as the stone. And if it worked, Holden wouldn't just sell cars. They'd write history, the myths, the flaws, the betrayal. But legends aren't built without battles. And the 202's war was brutal. The engine was bigger, but not perfect.
Here comes French. He must have gone down the escape road at the end of the straight. That shows you how slippery it is because...
Split bores plagued some blocks. Oil starvation haunted racers who revved too high. Cooling issues melted more than a few head gaskets. Rivals laughed. Ford's inline 6 was seen as smoother. Chrysler's Hemi 6 was tougher, revier, deadlier on the strip. And then came politics. The Supercar Scare. Newspapers screamed headlines of 160 miles per hour bullets on wheels. Politicians fumed. Parents panicked. High-powered engines in family sedans were branded a national menace. Holden's big plans for a Bathurst special Torana with an even hotter 202 were strangled in the cradle. General Motors slammed the brakes. Performance was neutered, engines detuned, carburetors downsized. The 202 was caught in the crossfire, its raw potential buried under emissions gear and corporate fear. Too fragile. Just a bored-out 186. Hopeless past 5,000 RPM. But in the streets, a different story was brewing. Backyard mechanics found the 202's secrets. Ported heads, big cams, triple Webers. Suddenly, this fragile engine was screaming down quarter miles in under 12 seconds. It was a street brawler, a working man's hero, and Bathurst was about to prove it to the world, the turning point. Bathurst, October 1972. The stage was set. On one side, Ford's Falcon GT XU Phase 3, a 351 cubic inch monster, the fastest four-door sedan in the world. On the other, Holden's nimble Torana GTR XU-1, powered by a triple-carb 202. David versus Goliath. The experts said the Falcon was unbeatable. Too much horsepower and too much speed, too much car. But the Mountain had other ideas. Alan Moffat's Phase 3 roared down Conrad Strait, raw speed, unstoppable power. Yet the little Torana danced through corners. It braked later, it handled tighter, and lap after lap the 202 howled with defiance. By the race's end, the Falcon was beaten. The Torana had done the impossible. The 202 had carried Holden to Bathurst glory. That day, myths were shattered. The 202 wasn't fragile. It wasn't weak. It was a giant killer. The legend that refused to die. The 202 became more than an engine. It became a symbol. It powered Kingswoods, Commodores, Toranas. It pulled caravans across the Nullarbor. It lit up suburban burnout pads. It roared down drag strips at midnight. And while GM may have tried to hide its power, the people unlocked it. Turbo kits turned it into a monster. Injected setups gave it new life. Backyard builders squeezed 300, 400, even 500 horsepower from blocks once called fragile. Decades later, you can still hear them. Rumbling through car meets, screaming on quarter miles, idling rough at traffic lights, carbies gulping fuel. The 202 became more than an engine. It became a survivor, a fighter, a legend. GM might have tried to bury it. Regulations might have strangled it. But the Holden 202 refused to die. This is its explosive truth. The motor they tried to silence, but could never kill. Some legends fade with time, but not this one. The 202 still echoes in sheds, racetracks, and memories across Australia. A backyard hero, a Bathurst warrior, a survivor of bans, betrayals, and decades of doubt. It wasn't meant to last this long. It wasn't meant to be remembered, but here we are, still telling its story. Because engines like the 202 don't just power cars. They power memories, they power myths, they power us. So the next time you hear that rough idle, that angry bark from a red motor, remember, this is no ordinary 6. This is the Holden 202. The motor they tried to bury, but Australia refused to forget.